The lecture hall fell silent as Professor Velka's question hung in the air like a blade suspended by spider silk. Her 4 eyes swept across the amphitheater, pausing on each young cadet who suddenly found their data tablets incredibly fascinating. "No one!" Velka clicked her mandibles in amusement. "Surely someone in this academy has an answer. Why are Earth veterans considered the most dangerous beings in the known galaxy?" A tentacle rose hesitantly from the 3rd row. Velka gestured for the Aquarian student to speak. "Because they have superior weapons technology," the student offered weakly. "Wrong." Velka's laugh was sharp and brittle. "The Kralix Imperium has plasma cannons that can crack moons. The Synthetic Collective possesses computational warfare capabilities beyond organic comprehension. Yet neither strikes fear into military commanders the way a single human combat veteran does. Anyone else?" Silence. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice spoke up. Clear, confident, human. "Because we don't fight to win, Professor. We fight to end things." Every head in the amphitheater swiveled toward the speaker. Lieutenant Maya Reeves stood, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The surgical scars along her jawline caught the light, thin silver lines that marked her as someone who had seen combat. Real combat. Not simulations. Velka's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "Ah, Lieutenant Reeves, how convenient. Perhaps you would care to elaborate for your less experienced classmates?" Maya descended the stairs slowly, her boots echoing in the sudden quiet. When she reached the center platform, she turned to face the assembled cadets. 300 alien faces stared back at her, with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed skepticism. "Most species," Maya began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the space, "fight wars according to rules, protocols, conventions established over millennia of interstellar conflict. You fight until one side surrenders, or until a treaty is negotiated, or until resources are depleted. War, for most of you, is politics by other means. It has objectives, limitations, acceptable casualty ratios." She paused, letting her words settle. "Humans don't think that way. When we go to war, truly go to war, we don't do it to achieve political objectives. We do it to eliminate the threat. Permanently. Completely. Utterly." A Centaurian cadet, his crystalline features reflecting rainbow light, raised a hand. "But surely that is just propaganda. Psychological warfare designed to intimidate opponents." Maya's laugh was short and humorless. "You want examples? Fine. Let me tell you about the Yorn conflict." Professor Velka settled into her observation chair, her posture indicating this was exactly where she had intended the lesson to go. "The Yorn were a predatory species," Maya continued, pacing the platform. "Apex hunters from a high-gravity world. They had conquered 17 systems before they made the mistake of attacking a human mining colony on Kepler-9. The colony had maybe 2,000 people, families, children. The Yorn killed 60% of them in the first strike." She stopped pacing and locked eyes with the Centaurian cadet. "Do you know what happened next?" The cadet shook his head. "The Galactic Council offered mediation. The Yorn refused. They saw humanity as weak, as prey. So we sent a diplomatic envoy. The Yorn executed them live on inter-system broadcast." Maya's voice remained steady, almost conversational. "That was their second mistake." "What was their first?" someone called out. "Attacking in the first place," Maya said flatly. "Within 6 standard months, the Yorn Dominion ceased to exist. Not conquered, not subjugated. Gone. Every military installation turned to glass. Every warship reduced to debris. Every fortress world blockaded until they surrendered unconditionally. And when I say unconditionally, I mean their entire governmental structure was dismantled, their military permanently disbanded, and their society restructured from the ground up. The lecture hall was absolutely silent now. The council called it excessive, Maya continued. They said humanity had violated countless conventions regarding proportional response. Human diplomats listened politely, then pointed out that the Yorn had violated the one rule that actually mattered to us. They had deliberately targeted civilians, killed children, bragged about it. She leaned against the podium, her expression hardening. So, yes, we eliminated the threat. And we made sure everyone watching understood that there are lines you do not cross with humanity. Not ever. A Vraxian cadet, her scales shifting colors nervously, spoke up. But, Lieutenant, that sounds like revenge, not strategy. Does it? Maya's eyebrows rose. Tell me, in the 80 years since the Yorn conflict, how many species have deliberately targeted human civilian populations? The cadet's scales went pale. None that I am aware of. Exactly none, Maya confirmed. Because they learned. We taught them with fire and blood and absolute commitment that some actions have consequences beyond negotiation. You want to fight humans in a conventional war? Fine. We will engage according to accepted protocols. You want to make it personal? You want to target the defenseless? Then we stop fighting to win and start fighting to end. And we will not stop until you no longer exist as a threat. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Professor Velka rose from her chair. Lieutenant Reeves makes an important point that many civilizations fail to grasp. Human combat psychology is fundamentally different from most sapient species. They possess what military theorists call an extinction switch, a threshold that, once crossed, transforms their military doctrine from conventional warfare to total warfare. But that is barbaric, the Centaurian cadet protested. Civilized species have evolved beyond such savage responses. Maya's laugh was genuinely amused this time. Civilized? You think civilization makes violence obsolete? No. Civilization is the agreement not to use maximum violence unless absolutely necessary. But never, ever mistake our restraint for inability. She walked to the display console and pulled up a holographic image. A planet hung in the air, beautiful and blue. This was Threshold, a human colony world. 5 million inhabitants. The Keltherin swarm attacked it 4 years ago. They didn't want the planet for resources. They didn't want strategic advantage. They wanted to prove humans could be broken. The image shifted. The planet was now gray and lifeless. The Keltherin used biological weapons, viruses specifically engineered to cause maximum suffering before death. By the time human forces arrived, everyone was dead. Everyone, including the medical teams who had stayed to try and save people, including the children in sealed evacuation shelters. Maya's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every being in the hall heard her clearly. The Keltherin thought this would demoralize us, break our spirit. Instead, it activated something primal, something our civilization usually keeps locked away. What happened to the Keltherin? Velka asked, though she clearly already knew. We found their homeworld, Maya said simply. We found every colony, every outpost, every ship in their fleet. And we introduced them to a concept they didn't understand until it was far too late. Mutually assured destruction. Except there was nothing mutual about it. We assured their destruction. They ceased to exist as a species. You committed genocide? The Vraxian cadet sounded horrified. No, Maya corrected sharply. We gave them every opportunity to surrender. We broadcast warnings on every frequency. We offered to accept their unconditional surrender up until the final moment. They chose to keep fighting. They chose to release more bioweapons at our approaching fleets. They chose extinction over admitting they had made a catastrophic error. She turned to face the class fully. That is what makes human veterans dangerous. Not our weapons, not our tactics. The absolute certainty that if you push us past a certain point, we will not stop until the threat is neutralized. We will sacrifice everything, pay any price, accept any loss to achieve that goal. Because once that switch flips, once we stop fighting to win and start fighting to end, there is no negotiation, no compromise, no surrender, except yours. A long silence followed. Then a small voice from the front row asked, "Have you reached that point, Lieutenant? Have you flipped that switch?" Maya looked at the young Peltorian cadet who had asked the question. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, something old and painful and terrible. "Yes," she said quietly. "Once." "What happened?" "The enemy ceased to be a problem," Maya replied, "and I became the person standing in front of you today. Someone who understands exactly what that kind of commitment costs. Someone who knows that the most dangerous human is not the one who wants to fight, but the one who has decided the fighting must end, no matter what it takes." Professor Velka moved to stand beside Maya. "This, cadets, is why military doctrine requires extensive psychological profiling before engaging human forces. Why treaties with Earth include specific clauses about protecting civilian populations. Why even the most aggressive species in the galaxy think twice before provoking humanity beyond conventional warfare." "But surely," the Centaurian cadet persisted, "this is an unsustainable approach. Violence only breeds more violence." Maya shook her head slowly. "You're right that violence breeds violence in most cases. But overwhelming, absolute, unquestionable violence? That breeds caution, respect, a very clear understanding of consequences. The galaxy is not a peaceful place because everyone loves each other. It's peaceful because everyone understands the cost of certain actions." She pulled up another hologram, a star map showing hundreds of systems. "These are human-allied territories. Notice something? No active conflicts, no border disputes that have escalated to shooting. Why? Because every species on these borders has seen what happens when lines get crossed. They have heard the stories. They have studied the history. Fear is not the same as respect," the Vraxian cadet said. "True," Maya agreed, "but fear prevents war. Respect makes peace possible. Both have their place." She glanced at Velka. "And despite what you might think, humans prefer peace. We're actually pretty good at it when given the chance. We'll trade, negotiate, compromise on almost everything. But threatening our families, our children, our homes, that ends the conversation and starts something else entirely." A new cadet raised a tentacle. "How does one know where the line is? How do we know what will trigger this response?" "That," Velka interjected, "is actually quite simple. Treat humans the way you would want to be treated. Honor agreements. Fight fairly if you must fight. And above all, never, ever target non-combatants. Follow those rules, and you'll never see the side of humanity that Lieutenant Reeves is describing." Maya nodded. "The irony is that humans are probably the most forgiving species in the galaxy when it comes to conventional military conflict. We respect worthy opponents. We negotiate honorable surrenders. We help rebuild after wars end. But that all depends on you fighting the kind of war that can end with handshakes and treaties." "And if someone crosses the line?" the Peltorian cadet asked. "Then they discover that humans have excellent memories," Maya said, "and an almost infinite capacity for commitment when properly motivated. We will pursue a threat across parsecs. We will wait decades if necessary. We will adapt, improvise, overcome every obstacle. Because once we decide something must end, it will end." Professor Velka gestured for attention. "Cadets, I want you to understand something crucial. Lieutenant Reeves is not bragging or trying to frighten you. She is providing vital intelligence about a powerful ally and potential enemy. Understanding human psychology is as important as understanding human technology. More important, Maya added, because our technology will be matched eventually. Every weapon finds its counter. But psychology? That's hardwired. That's millions of years of evolution creating a species that can be incredibly gentle and unfathomably ruthless, depending on the circumstances. Can you tell us your story? The Vraxian cadet asked. You said you flipped the switch once. What happened? Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of memory. I was stationed on a diplomatic vessel. We were escorting Galactic Council members to peace negotiations between two minor species having a border dispute. Standard assignment. Boring, really. Then pirates attacked. She walked to the window, looking out at the stars beyond the academy. These weren't ordinary pirates. They were slavers, the worst kind. They didn't want our cargo or our ship. They wanted people. Specifically, they wanted council members to ransom. Her hands clenched into fists. They also wanted humans. Apparently, we fetch high prices in illegal fighting rings. Fighting rings? Someone asked. Gladiatorial combat, Belka explained. Humans are considered particularly entertaining because they refuse to give up even when severely injured. Right, Maya continued. So these slavers disabled our ship, boarded us, and started taking prisoners. My commanding officer tried to negotiate. They shot her. Just bang, right in front of everyone. Then they started dragging people away. One of the council members was a Peltorian, like you. She nodded to the young cadet. She had 2 younglings with her. The slavers decided the younglings would be worth more separately. Maya's voice went flat, emotionless. The mother begged, screamed, fought. They beat her unconscious and took the younglings anyway. The Peltorian cadet made a sound of distress. Something happened in my head at that moment, Maya said. A switch flipped. I stopped thinking about survival or rescue or any kind of rational response. I started thinking about how to kill every single slaver on that ship. You were one person, the Centaurian cadet said. How could you possibly? I didn't care about the odds, Maya replied. I cared about ending the threat. So I did. I broke free during transport, killed my guards with their own weapons, and then I went hunting. 12 slavers on that ship. I killed them all. Some quickly. Some, the ones who had touched those younglings, not so quickly. Surely you had help, Belka asked. No. By the time I was done, other prisoners had freed themselves and secured the ship. But the actual fighting? That was just me. And when it was over, when every slaver was dead and the younglings were safe, I realized I had become something different. Something scary. Not just to the enemy, but to everyone. She turned back to face the class. That is what I mean about human veterans being feared. We can become something other than human when necessary. We can shut down empathy, mercy, hesitation, everything that makes us civilized, and become pure function, pure purpose. And when we do, we are absolutely terrifying to witness. Do you regret it? The Vraxian cadet asked softly. Maya considered the question carefully. I regret it was necessary. I regret what I became in those hours. But I don't regret the outcome. Those younglings are alive today. That mother got her children back. And every slaver who might have heard the story thinks twice before attacking a ship with humans aboard. Professor Velka cleared her throat. This, cadets, is the essence of today's lesson. Human veterans are feared not because they are invincible, but because they possess an almost unique trait among sapient species: the ability to completely commit to a course of action regardless of personal cost, to become temporarily, the monster necessary to defeat monsters. Are all humans like this? Someone asked. No, Maya answered immediately. Most humans go their entire lives without ever reaching that point. Most of us prefer peace, kindness, cooperation. We build beautiful things. We create art, music, literature. We laugh and love and live quietly. But every human has the capacity, buried somewhere deep, to flip that switch if circumstances demand it. How do we work alongside humans knowing this? The Centaurian cadet asked. Maya smiled, and this time it was genuine. The same way you work alongside any powerful force, with respect, honesty, and clear communication. Be our friends, and you'll find no better allies. Be our enemies, and, well, you heard the lesson. Velka checked her chrono display. We are out of time for today. Your assignment is to research 3 historical human conflicts and write an analysis of their approach to warfare compared to other species. Pay particular attention to the conditions that triggered escalation versus de-escalation. Dismissed. The cadets began filing out, most still looking thoughtful or disturbed. The Peltorian cadet approached Maya hesitantly. Lieutenant, thank you for saving those younglings, for being willing to become what was needed. Maya's expression softened. That's what veterans do. We put ourselves in the dark places so others don't have to. We carry the weight so civilians can sleep peacefully. It's not heroic. It's just necessary. As the young cadet left, Velka moved beside Maya. That was well done, Lieutenant. You have given them much to think about. Did I scare them too badly? Fear and understanding are not mutually exclusive, Velka replied. They needed to understand what humanity is capable of. What you are capable of. Now they will be better officers for it. Maya nodded slowly, watching the last of the students disappear through the doorway. Outside the window, a transport ship lifted off from the Academy landing pad, its engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, conflicts simmered. Threats developed. And if those threats ever materialized into something that crossed that invisible line, humanity would respond. Not with conquest, not with expansion, but with absolute, uncompromising commitment to ending the threat. Because that was what humans did when pushed too far. They didn't fight to win. They fought to end. And that, Professor Velka thought, watching her human colleague, was precisely why they were feared. 3 days after the lecture, Maya found herself in the Academy's Tactical Simulation Center, running combat scenarios for advanced cadets. The room hummed with holographic projectors, creating an environment so realistic that participants often forgot they were in a simulation. Today's exercise involved a hostage rescue on a space station. Standard procedure, supposedly. But Maya had programmed something special into this scenario, something that would test whether her lecture had actually taught these cadets anything useful. All right, listen up, Maya called out as the 10-cadet team assembled. She recognized several faces from the lecture hall, including the Centaurian who had questioned her so persistently. His name was Krell, she had learned. Your mission is straightforward. Hostile forces have seized Waypoint Station, a civilian hub with approximately 3,000 inhabitants. Intelligence suggests the hostiles are planning to execute prisoners unless their demands are met. You have 1 hour. Krell raised his hand. What are their demands? Does it matter? Maya countered. Innocent lives are at stake. Your job is to neutralize the threat and secure the civilians. Questions? The Vraxian cadet, whose name was Surtha, spoke up. Rules of engagement? Minimize civilian casualties. Beyond that, use your judgment. You've all passed tactical certification. Show me what you learned. Maya gestured to the simulation pods. Mount up. Clock starts in 60 seconds. The cadets scrambled into their pods, neural interfaces syncing with the holographic environment. Maya settled into the observation booth beside instructor Dravix, a four-armed Korthan with decades of military experience. "You modified the standard scenario," Dravix noted, his voice a deep rumble. "I added variables," Maya agreed. "Let's see how they handle it." The simulation flickered to life. The cadet team materialized aboard an assault shuttle approaching Waypoint Station. Through the observation feed, Maya watched them organize quickly. Krell took point as squad leader, dividing his team into 3 units: breach, rescue, and support. "Good instincts," Dravix murmured. "Krell may doubt your species, but he understands tactical fundamentals." The breach went smoothly. Too smoothly. The cadets secured the docking bay with minimal resistance, taking down simulated hostiles with practiced efficiency. They moved through the station corridors in textbook formation, clearing rooms and securing civilians. Then Maya's modifications kicked in. Alarms blared. The station's AI announced a core meltdown, 30 minutes until catastrophic failure. Simultaneously, the hostiles executed 3 prisoners in the central plaza, broadcasting it station-wide. "What?" Krell's voice crackled over the comms. "This was not in the briefing." "Neither is reality," Maya muttered, watching their responses. The cadet team froze, literally stopped moving for precious seconds while they processed the new information. Maya could see the debate happening over their tactical channel, voices overlapping in confusion. "They are panicking," Dravix observed. "They're thinking like politicians," Maya corrected, "trying to find the optimal solution that saves everyone. Watch." Krell finally made a decision. "Split priorities. Surtha, take 4 to engineering. Stop that meltdown. I will lead the rest to rescue remaining hostages." Sound strategy, except Maya had programmed another wrinkle. The moment Surtha's team separated, they encountered heavy resistance. The hostiles had anticipated the split and concentrated their forces. In the observation booth, Maya pulled up biometric data from the simulation pods. Stress levels rising, decision-making slowing, classic signs of cadets overthinking under pressure. "They are going to fail," Dravix said flatly. "Probably," Maya agreed, "but failure teaches better than success sometimes." On screen, Surtha's team was pinned down, 3 cadets wounded in the simulation, bleeding out while the others tried to provide covering fire. Meanwhile, Krell's rescue team reached the plaza only to discover the hostiles had rigged the entire section with explosives. "This is impossible," one of the cadets shouted. "We cannot save everyone." "Then choose," Krell responded, his voice strained. "We save who we can." But the hesitation had cost them. The simulation timer hit 0. The station's core melted down. Everyone died, hostages and rescuers alike. The holographic environment dissolved. The cadets climbed out of their pods, several looking physically ill. Krell's crystalline features had gone dark, a sign of deep distress in Centaurians. "Instructor Reeves," he said formally. "That scenario was rigged. There was no winning solution." "Was there not?" Maya descended from the observation booth, her boots clicking on the metal floor. "Dravix, play back the first 5 minutes." The hologram reformed, showing the initial breach. Maya paused the image. "Here, right here, you had 12 hostiles in the docking bay. You neutralized them non-lethally because you were following conventional engagement protocols. Stun weapons, restraints, by the book." She walked through the frozen hologram. "What if you had not? What if you had eliminated them permanently and moved faster?" "That would be excessive force," Surtha protested. "They were already incapacitated." "They were obstacles between you and the civilians you were supposed to save," Maya countered. "Every second you spent securing prisoners was a second lost. And when that core started melting down, Those seconds mattered. Krell's features shifted to red. You want us to execute prisoners? I want you to understand priority, Maya said sharply. This is what my lecture was about. You were so concerned with fighting the right way that you forgot what you were fighting for. 3,000 civilians died in that simulation because you hesitated to do what was necessary. This is not fair, another cadet objected. You created an impossible situation. War creates impossible situations, Maya shot back. The enemy does not care about fairness. They care about winning. And while you were debating ethics, they were executing hostages and sabotaging the station. She pulled up another part of the simulation. Here, when you split your forces. That was when you lost. You tried to save everyone, so you saved no one. A human veteran would have made a different choice. What choice? Krell demanded. Maya met his eyes steadily. Forget the meltdown. Let the station die if necessary. Focus everything on getting those civilians off before it blows. Commandeer every shuttle, every escape pod, every ship in the docking bay. Load people and launch. You had 30 minutes. That's enough time to evacuate hundreds, maybe thousands if you move fast and stop worrying about protocol. But the hostiles would be dealt with, Maya interrupted. Quickly, permanently. No prisoners, no negotiations, no restraint. They chose to execute civilians. They surrendered their right to mercy. You eliminate them as rapidly as possible and focus on evacuation. Dravix rumbled his approval. The lieutenant is correct. You cadets fought like you were worried about medals and commendations. Real combat requires ugly choices. Surtha's scales flickered uncertainly. But our training emphasizes minimizing harm to all parties, even enemies. And that training serves you well 90% of the time, Maya acknowledged. But this simulation represented the other 10%. The situations where conventional thinking gets everyone killed. The moments when you need to flip that switch. She gestured for them to gather around the tactical display. Let me show you how a human strike team would handle this. Computer, reset simulation. Override code Reeves 7. The hologram reformed. This time, instead of the cadet team, a squad of human Marines materialized. Maya had recorded this scenario weeks ago, anticipating this teaching moment. Watch carefully, she instructed. The human team breached the docking bay. The engagement lasted 8 seconds. Every hostile went down with lethal precision. No attempts at capture. The Marines moved like water, flowing through corridors with frightening efficiency. When the meltdown alarm sounded, there was no debate. The team leader, a scarred woman named Vasquez, made an instant decision. Forget the core. All units, evacuation protocol. Civilians to the docks, now! The Marines stopped hunting hostiles and started herding civilians. They were not gentle about it. They grabbed people, pushed them, shouted orders, drove them toward the docking bay like ranchers moving cattle. Efficient, not polite. When hostiles tried to interfere, the Marines eliminated them without breaking stride. No warning shots, no attempts to wound, just cold, clinical removal of obstacles. They are treating the civilians roughly, Krell observed. They are treating them like survivors, Maya corrected. Sometimes you save lives by being harsh. Those civilians are scared, confused, in shock. Polite requests waste time. Orders and action save lives. On screen, Vasquez reached the plaza where the hostages were held. The situation was identical to what the cadets had faced. Explosives rigged, hostiles ready to detonate. Vasquez's solution was simple and brutal. Her team's sniper, positioned during the initial breach, took out every hostile simultaneously. 6 shots in under 3 seconds. The hostages did not even have time to scream before their captors were dead. That is impossible, Surtha breathed. The timing required is exactly what human special forces train for, Maya said. We practice the impossible until it becomes merely difficult. The simulation continued. The human team loaded every available ship with civilians. When they ran out of ships, they packed escape pods beyond recommended capacity. With 5 minutes left on the meltdown timer, Vasquez made the final call. Launch everything. We will take the last shuttle. Ma'am, we cannot fit everyone, one Marine reported. 37 civilians still on station. Then we make room, Vasquez said flatly. She turned to her team. Marines, stay. Civilians, go. Load them. The Marines physically lifted civilians into the shuttle, cramming the space beyond any safety regulation. When there was literally no room left, Vasquez sealed the hatch and launched it manually from outside. What are they doing? A cadet asked. They will die. Maybe, Maya said quietly. Watch. The shuttle launched. 30 seconds left on the timer. The Marines ran, not toward escape, but toward the station's maintenance section. They found emergency V-key suits, old and poorly maintained but functional. They sealed themselves in just as the core went critical. The station exploded. Debris scattered across space. For a long moment, there was nothing but wreckage and radiation. Then, one by one, emergency beacons activated. The Marines, floating in their vac suits, waiting for pickup. All 6 survived. They risked everything for 37 people, Krell said softly. They decided the mission was not complete until everyone possible was saved, Maya corrected. That is the difference. You cadets tried to find the perfect solution. The humans accepted there was no perfect solution and improvised the best possible outcome given the circumstances. She turned off the hologram. That is what I meant about fighting to end things. Those Marines did not fight to look good or follow regulations. They fought to finish the job, whatever it took. They prioritized results over recognition, survival over safety protocols, action over analysis. Dravix nodded approvingly. The lieutenant makes an excellent point. In crisis situations, decisive action beats perfect planning. The humans won because they committed fully and adapted constantly. But they nearly died, another cadet protested. Nearly is not the same as actually, Maya said. And even if they had died, they would have died knowing they saved everyone they possibly could. That is what veterans understand. Sometimes the mission costs everything, and you pay that cost willingly. Krell's features slowly shifted back to neutral coloration. I think I am beginning to understand. It is not about being ruthless for its own sake. It is about being willing to do whatever the specific situation requires, even when those requirements are extreme. Exactly, Maya confirmed. Context matters. Most situations do not require extreme measures, but when they do, hesitation kills. You need to recognize those critical moments and act without second-guessing yourself. Surtha raised a claw hesitantly. How do we know when we have reached that point? How do we know when to flip the switch, as you say? Maya considered the question carefully. You'll know. There's a clarity that comes in those moments. Everything else falls away, and there's just the mission, the threat, and what needs to happen. Your training kicks in, but also something deeper. Instinct, survival drive, protective rage, sometimes. She pulled up a chair and sat facing the cadets. Let me tell you another story. Not mine this time, but my mentor's. Commander Jackson Torres, best officer I ever served under. The cadets gathered closer, sensing this was important. Torres was leading a peacekeeping operation on a colony world having civil unrest. Standard deployment. Keep the factions from killing each other while diplomats worked out a solution. His team was stationed at a hospital, neutral ground, protected under every convention imaginable. Maya's expression hardened. Then one faction decided to make a statement. They attacked the hospital, not to capture it strategically, but to massacre everyone inside. Patients, doctors, children in the pediatric ward. They wanted to terrorize the opposition into surrender. What did Torres do? Krell asked. He had 30 soldiers against 300 attackers, Maya said. Conventional tactics said retreat, call for reinforcement, save who you could. Torres looked at those. Children looked at his team and made a different choice. He decided that hospital would not fall. Period. She stood and began pacing. They held for 6 hours. 6 hours against overwhelming odds. Torres turned that hospital into a fortress. Every window became a firing position, every corridor a kill zone, every room a fallback point. His team fought like demons, and when they started running low on ammunition, they got creative. Creative? How? Surtha asked nervously. Medical supplies can be improvised into weapons if you are desperate enough, Maya said simply. Torres used his engineering background to rig traps, create diversions, turn the hospital itself into a weapon. By the time reinforcements arrived, his team had held off every assault. 28 of his 30 soldiers were wounded. Torres himself had been shot 4 times. But the hospital? Every single person inside survived, Maya said. Every patient, every child, every doctor. Not one civilian casualty. Torres had decided those people were under his protection, and he made that decision reality through sheer force of will. Dravix added his own commentary. I was part of the reinforcement team that relieved Torres. When we arrived, the scene was disturbing. The attackers had suffered catastrophic losses trying to breach that hospital. Bodies everywhere. Torres's team had transformed from peacekeepers into something primal. But the moment we secured the perimeter, they switched back, started treating enemy wounded, helped restore order, returned to being professional soldiers. That is the switch, Maya said. The ability to become what the situation demands, then return to yourself afterward. It is not easy. It takes training, discipline, and a very clear sense of purpose. But when you have it, when you can flip that switch consciously and control it, you become the kind of veteran that makes enemies think twice. She looked at each cadet individually. That is what I want you to learn. Not how to be brutal, but how to be effective when effectiveness requires difficult choices. How to recognize the moments that demand total commitment and act without hesitation. Krell stood at attention. Instructor Reeves, I owe you an apology. I thought your lecture was propaganda. Exaggeration meant to intimidate. I understand now that you were simply being honest about a difficult truth. Apology accepted, Maya said. Understanding is more valuable than agreement. You do not have to like how humans approach warfare, but you need to comprehend it if you are going to work alongside us. Can we run the simulation again? Surtha asked. I would like to try applying these principles. Maya smiled. That is exactly what I was hoping to hear. Computer, reset scenario. Same parameters, but increased difficulty by 20%. 20%? A cadet squeaked. We already failed the original. Then you will work harder, Maya said cheerfully. Dravix and I will observe and provide real-time feedback. This time, remember what you saw. Prioritize outcomes over process. Be willing to make the hard calls. And above all, commit fully to whatever course of action you choose. The cadets returned to their pods with noticeably different attitudes. There was determination now where before there had been uncertainty. The simulation began again. This time, the breach was faster, more aggressive. Krell made split-second decisions without consulting his team first, trusting them to adapt. When the meltdown alarms sounded, he did not hesitate. Forget the core. All units, evacuation mode. They were not as smooth as the human Marines, not nearly as experienced, but they learned quickly, adapted constantly, and, most importantly, they acted decisively. When faced with the explosive-rigged plaza, Krell did not try the impossible synchronized shot. Instead, he had his team create a diversion, while Sirtha's technical specialist disabled the detonator. Different approach than the humans, but equally effective. The timer counted down. The cadets loaded civilians with increasing efficiency, learning to manage panic through firm direction rather than gentle reassurance. When the final seconds approached, they did not abandon anyone. The entire team crammed into the last shuttle with the remaining civilians, violating every safety protocol, but saving every life. The station exploded behind them. The simulation ended with 0 casualties. The cadets emerged from their pods exhausted but triumphant. Krell actually smiled, his features glowing bright blue with satisfaction. "We did it," he said simply. "You did," Maya confirmed. "Not perfectly, not the way human veterans would, but effectively. You adapted your approach while staying true to your own nature. That is actually ideal." Dravix approached the group. "Well done, cadets. You demonstrated growth under pressure. That is the mark of true warriors, regardless of species." Maya gathered them for the debrief. "Here is what you did right. First, you recognized when the situation changed and adapted your priorities immediately. Second, you trusted your training and each other enough to act decisively. Third, you found solutions that worked for your capabilities rather than trying to copy someone else's methods." "What did we do wrong?" Sirtha asked. "Your initial entry was still too cautious," Maya said honestly. "You cleared rooms like you were worried about damaging property. In a crisis, speed matters more than tidiness. Also, your communication was cluttered. Too many words, not enough action. That comes with experience, though." She pulled up the tactical data. "But overall, you showed me something important today. You showed me that the lessons about human combat psychology can be learned and applied by other species. You found your own version of that switch, your own way of committing fully when necessary." Krell stepped forward. "Instructor, I have a question. Do you think there will come a time when we need to use these skills for real? When theory becomes practice?" Maya's expression grew serious. "Honestly, I hope not. The galaxy has been relatively peaceful for decades. But hope is not a strategy. Training for the worst means you are prepared if it happens, and pleasantly surprised if it does not." "The Galactic Council believes the age of major conflicts is past," another cadet said. "The Council believed that before the Kelthran attacked Threshold 2, Maya replied quietly. "Peace is maintained through strength and vigilance, not wishful thinking. You cadets represent the next generation of that vigilance." Dravix checked his chrono. "We are well over time. Dismissed, cadets. Excellent work today." As the students filed out, still discussing the simulation excitedly, Krell lingered behind. He approached Maya with obvious hesitation. "Lieutenant, may I ask something personal?" "Depends on how personal," Maya said carefully. "The story you told about the slavers, when you flipped the switch. Do you still see them? The ones you killed?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Every single one. Every face. Every moment. It does not go away. That is part of the cost I mentioned." "Then how do you cope?" "I remember why I did it," Maya said softly. "I remember those younglings reuniting with their mother. I remember the other prisoners who survived. I focus on the outcome, not the method, and I accept that some burdens are worth carrying if they mean others do not have to." Krell's features shifted through several colors before settling on a respectful silver. "Thank you for your honesty, instructor, and for sharing these difficult lessons with us." After he left, Dravix approached Maya. "That was well taught, Lieutenant. You gave them more than tactical knowledge today. You gave them wisdom. I gave them nightmares, probably, Maya said wryly. Good nightmares, Dravix rumbled. The kind that prepare you for reality rather than hiding from it. The galaxy needs officers who understand that peace requires the capacity for war. You are teaching them that capacity. Maya looked out the observation window at the academy grounds below. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species, all training to serve in a unified military. It was an imperfect system, full of cultural misunderstandings and conflicting doctrines. But it worked more often than not. Do you think they truly understand now? Maya asked. About why human veterans are feared? They understand enough, Dravix said. They understand that fear and respect intertwine. That capability without morality is dangerous, but morality without capability is useless. You showed them that humans possess both, and more importantly, the wisdom to know when each applies. That is a generous interpretation. It is an accurate one. Dravix placed one of his 4 hands on her shoulder in a gesture of respect. You carry heavy knowledge, Lieutenant Reeves. The knowledge of what you are capable of, what your species is capable of. But you wield that knowledge responsibly. That is why you are a good teacher. After Dravix left, Maya remained in the observation booth, watching the sun set over the academy. Somewhere out there, conflicts waited. Threats developed, and when they materialized, when lines got crossed and switches got flipped, humanity would respond. Not with joy, not with pride, but with absolute commitment. Because that was what veterans understood. That was what the galaxy needed to understand. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to end things. And that difference, that fundamental shift in approach, was what made them both valuable allies and terrifying enemies. Maya touched the scars on her jawline, feeling the raised tissue beneath her fingertips. Reminders of battles fought, costs paid, switches flipped. She would carry those scars, physical and otherwise, for the rest of her life. But looking down at the academy, at cadets from across the galaxy learning to understand each other and work together, she thought perhaps the cost was worth it. Perhaps the nightmares served a purpose. Perhaps the fear was justified, but so was the hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of species with competing interests and incompatible philosophies. But it was also full of beings willing to learn, willing to bridge differences, willing to build something better. And if that better future required veterans like Maya to stand in the dark places, to flip the switch when necessary, to fight not for glory, but to end threats permanently and absolutely, well, that was a burden she would gladly carry. Because in the end, that was what it meant to be a human veteran. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, just the most committed, the most willing to do what was necessary, pay what it cost, and become what the situation demanded. And that, more than any weapon or tactic, was why they were feared.